I just need to reiterate again how much that song sounds like the Beverly Hills Cop main theme. That do 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 do. It really, really, really sounds like the guy listened to whoever wrote this song, listened to Beverly Hills Cop theme, and then was like, yeah, that, and then just sort of rewrote it for themselves. Welcome to Meet the Tanukis. My name is PJ Metz. I have my color changing shirt on. It's mango when it's cold, and then as it heats up, it turns white. And I don't know why I'm wearing this. It's Florida. It's 1,000,000 degrees outside. My air conditioner is working overtime just to get it to 76. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling happy. This is show number 2 of the day. Hopefully my internet's doing well, and it's actually pushing through all the tubes that we need to be able to connect. Thanks to Restream, which has their ever-present logo right up here, because I don't give them more than $20 a month, but that's okay. We're looking to upgrade soon, Restream. Don't worry, we'll get your logo out of there. Meet the Tanukis is a show all about my team members, teammates, my work buddies at GitLab. Because if you don't know this, I'm an education evangelist at GitLab. My job is to get people free licenses of GitLab if you are working at an educational institution. So if you're at a university or a vocational school and you want your kids to use GitLab, I'm not the guy to talk to. I'm the guy that points you to the website that you need to talk to about applying for it. And today, we are making our way through the community relations team. We've talked to Brendan O'Leary about accessibility last week. We talked to Abubakar, and we talked to Abubakar about diversity initiatives in Africa. He is from Nigeria, and he's a great dude. Absolutely great dude. And to round it out today, on this double header, 2 shows in a day, 2 streams in one day, we're going to be talking to a fantastic person, an amazing person, a person with a great history of community building in a variety of tech organizations. And I'm so excited to have her on my show today. Everybody, please welcome Jamie Rochelle to the stream. We made it.
Hello. Thanks for having me, PJ.
Oh, naturally. This is, in fact, something that I am very excited to be doing. First off, it's kind of a cool way to get to know people for me. And second, it's a great way to let the internet get to know people who I, so far, have not met a bad person at GitLab. And you're no exception to that rule, Jamie. You're a fantastic person. So I'm going to give you the screen here in a second. I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you got going on. So take it away, Jamie.
So I wanted to say first, thank you for elevating the coffee chat experience by doing live streams. This is pretty cool.
We're going to coffee chat, but you got to do it live. But don't worry, there's 0 people watching right now. But there will be people coming, I promise.
Right, so no pressure. But again, I'm Jamie Rochelle. I am almost into my 7th month here at GitLab. I am the Developer Evangelism Program Manager. So I help lead the initiatives for the wider community at GitLab, meaning the meetups, hero programs, and anything in between. So if you're interested to host a meetup on all things code or beyond code, we definitely, I'm your girl to reach out to. So just, I think PJ is going to drop my LinkedIn. So send me a message and follow me. So that's who I am.
Fantastic. And I like how you mentioned about code or beyond code. That's actually the name of a very specific meetup that you've been doing. You guys have done 2, 3 so far, beyond code?
We've done 2 so far. And the whole concept is when I first started Nerdcy, one of our teammates approached me and said, hey, we have all these great things that we do at GitLab that doesn't have to be developer related, right? Or you don't have to write code. Like there's so many different ways and avenues we can use it. But we also wanted to highlight the women in our organization, right? So that's how it kind of developed, and that was the brainchild. Excuse me, I'm super congested. Kind of just got over like a COVID situation, so bear with me.
I'm so sorry.
My energy is fine though, but other than that, you can hear other things that's going on. But yes, so the Beyond Code series was to try to highlight women in all the different roles that are non-engineering roles, right, or developer roles. So we've coined the term Beyond Code, which is a common phrase used. And we've highlighted now, I think it's been 7 women to share, from marketing to HR, or I should say people operations, to um, even some folks that are in engineering, how they use it just to do day-to-day project management and stuff that they've created on their own. And me coming in, I've learned so much from these. So I'm hoping that we'll have our next one maybe in October, maybe early November, because we will be celebrating 10 years at GitLab. So there's a lot of activities that are happening. So we don't want to get stuff, too bogged down with other virtual events. So that's just a little snippet about what Beyond Code is.
Absolutely awesome. And like you said, we've got a lot of great stuff coming up for GitLab in the coming months. But real quick, this is a tweet about Beyond Code. We had session 2. And I got to tell you, I really, really like that design. The little like bracket cones with the slash in between. I think it's fantastic.
Our design team is amazing. I kind of just went to them and said, hey, this is what our event entails and what it is, and what are some ideas, and this is what they came up with, and it's been great.
Yeah, and that initiative, it highlights 2 really important parts of what initiatives should these days, which is underrepresented people, talking about women in tech, and non-developer roles and applications within tech. Because if I say I work in tech, there's tons of parts of a tech job that don't involve writing code. My job doesn't have me writing code. They don't say, yeah, like we're not writing code on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I think that's what makes our team unique, right, PJ? Like, we're in a community relations space, so we support heavily the teams that are writing the code in those developer spaces, but most folks on our team, we aren't writing code, or we're non-technical, right? So
exactly. And that's the understanding that these are roles available within tech that have the same benefits as these tech roles. People need to know that this is an option, and Beyond Code was a great way of getting that word out. And that idea of a non-technical role inside of tech is pretty important to you, I think you've said before. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, with having a non-technical background, I try to encourage folks, and I kind of hesitate sometimes when people ask, like, oh, so what do you do, or where do you work? And they automatically assume or come with these assumptions of like, oh, well, if you're in the tech space, like, I don't qualify for that. Like, I'm interested in what you do, but I'm not, equipped to do it. So I find myself kind of trying to be an advocate for the folks that would normally not even look to companies like GitLab for a career option, because there's so many great things that happen, like you alluded to earlier, that in this space, there's so many roles and opportunities that keeps the company afloat and going with the same benefits in non-technical roles. So I think I've kind of found my niche over the last like 3.5 years of in the community relations space. There's so many opportunities and great folks to work with and network with within our company and others. And I'll get into like kind of how I got here a little later, but I just feel like there's so many avenues that I didn't even know of, right? So now I feel like I'm supposed to, take that torch and kind of run with it and let folks know, like, you can, still blaze a trail in tech, but not necessarily have to write code. So.
Right. And that non-traditional background into tech, whether you end up writing code or not, is such an underutilized pipeline. It feels like there are so many people who could be a huge benefit to a company that are immediately, they're almost taking themselves out of the application. They're like, oh, I could never do that. So they just don't even apply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I could applaud GitLab for, is even reading their job descriptions, right? Like, there's a blurb on there that says, even if you think you might not qualify, like, still push yourself. It's like still that level of encouragement. Like, even though you might think that you might be intimidated somewhat, like, go for it, right? So, and I don't think I've seen that before with other companies. So I think that's just, it's a testament to like how some of these tech companies are actually looking for talent and trying to encourage folks that, like, hey, if you came from finance, or, you came from education, right? Or like, I was in my role before this, I was at City National Bank in internal comms, so very rigid space, right? So coming from there and taking the leap to say like, okay, I'm ready to enter, into the tech world, so to speak.
Yeah.
Definitely was a leap, but I landed on my feet in a great place. So
Yeah, and that little bit of encouragement, like, hey, maybe you don't perfectly fit, apply anyway. And
yeah,
I always try and
absolutely.
tell people, don't reject yourself. Let them tell you they're rejecting you, and
Yeah,
it puts
absolutely.
them in the position they have to say no when it comes to giving you a job. Let them do it. Don't say no before you even ask.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, yeah, let's talk about your background a little bit. You said before tech, you were working at a bank and internal comms. What led you to go from there to GitLab? What's that road look like?
So briefly, well, let's see, how can I summarize this? So I've worked in the PR, internal comms, or even community relations space for probably, now it's been about 13, 14 years. So it's ranged from construction, so civil engineering company, to entertainment, um, a cancer research hospital, and then lastly was finance, so corporate banking. And you can only imagine that there's a lot of ebbs and flows and different audiences, right? So
That's a
I've
lot of
learned,
different audiences between
yes,
those different careers.
a
Yeah.
lot of different audiences. But I've learned so much with those different industries because the audiences are different and the initiatives are different, and community relations or PR looks different for all these companies, right? So, and all these jobs took place when I lived in Southern California. Um, and the one thing I like to tell people is, yes, there's amazing corporate jobs in Southern California, but there's also the rat race of people wanting to work for any company that might have a glitz and glam to it, right? So even though, I might be well versed in PR and internal comms, if I'm going to go up for a job at Netflix, some people don't necessarily qualify, but they know that they could pay minimum wage or minimum dollar for the talent, right? So I was kind of feeling like this burnout phase, and I'm originally from the Bay Area, Northern California, and I was away from home for a good 12 years. And something in my spirit was like, maybe it's time to leave LA. Maybe it's time to, grind your wheels somewhere else and apply your talent to somewhere else. And what's funny, the irony is, I finished school in SoCal in PR because I didn't want to get in tech. Like everything when I was in at San Jose State was geared toward like,
Wait. You were like, I really don't want to do tech. I'm gonna do PR. This seems like the better road for me.
yeah.
And here we are 15 years later.
And here I am. Yes, I literally was at San Jose State University, down the street from in Silicon Valley, where all the internships were like Yahoo and like all these companies. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. I wanted to be part of the glitz and glam, right? Like I wanted to do PR and entertainment. So I did, and I worked for Jamie Foxx for a couple years and did some things, and that was my first like real like, oh, I'm in PR and doing all this stuff, and realized quickly I turned and left the entertainment industry.
It's hard.
Again, the rat race, right? Folks are willing to do a lot for nothing, and I value my talent a little bit more than that. So again, that's what led me to say like, let's start looking for jobs in other places. So I started applying for jobs in the Bay Area and Houston and Atlanta, just to try, because I knew a lot of tech companies had started moving out of California. So I was just ready for a change. And my first role and interview that I got was with a company called Docker. And if you're in the open source community, you're probably very familiar with Docker. And I was a community relations marketing manager. So I managed all the global community programs, and helped revamp some of the stuff that they were doing in rebranding. And that was my first introduction to all things open source, containers, Kubernetes. I felt like I was learning a foreign language. And I still feel like I'm learning a foreign language
I
sometimes with
mean,
all the
that's
new acronyms and, alphabet soup that goes on in this world. But
the first tech job when you're learning acronyms. You're like, now is this a industry acronym or is this a company acronym? And I
yeah,
gotta be honest, like it's a hell of a jump into tech to start with containers and Dockers and
oh yeah,
Kubernetes and like those things. That's a big leap. So congratulations to you. You did it. And not only did you
yeah,
do it, you succeeded. So like,
yeah. And
well
it was an
done.
interesting space because that was a temp role that I was there for 9 months. And the person who brought me on, he left within like 2 months of being there. So I took over his role. I was shadowing him and he left and started a new company. And if you're familiar with startup world, that's kind of how it works. Um,
Yep. Yep.
so
Goodbye. And then they're your competitor.
yeah, so from Docker, I had a wonderful opportunity to join the Google Cloud developer events team, developer relation events team for 2 years and lead their open source events for cloud native and Kubernetes. So I got really familiar with a lot more and had to learn and stay on my toes because, again, I'm not technical. Um, but I was definitely thrusted in these event spaces and meeting new people quickly. So helping with contributor summits and all the good, all the good stuff that comes with those meetups as well. And then as my contract was coming to an end, I decided, hey, let me just, get more active on LinkedIn, less on Instagram, and kind of build up like, who is Jamie?
I really like that. Like, I'm really doing a lot on Instagram. I wonder if I could focus that into
Yeah, and it's
LinkedIn.
funny because I have friends that come to me like, oh, how did you get into GitLab? Or how did you find these roles? And I'm like, I'm the person that will delete Instagram off my phone, right? Like if I'm in a place of like I need to focus, I'll delete certain apps that I'm like, oh, that little trend thing comes up on your phone and like, oh, you spent this amount of time on here. Like, okay, time to delete, take a break.
Yep. You spent two
So that's
hours on
what I
Instagram
did. Yeah.
yesterday. I'm done now. Get
Yeah.
out of
So
there.
that's what I did. I built up on LinkedIn and, made sure it really reflected what I wanted to do career wise and just started networking. And I was recruited by GitLab. They came to me. I had never heard of, well, I shouldn't say that. I heard of GitLab because Google Cloud had partnered with them on a number of events. So I was familiar with them in that sense, but not necessarily like the meat and potatoes of what GitLab really stands for and what they represent, right? So obviously, I'm here. I got the job. But yeah, I was
That's right.
recruited. And I tell people, again, it's okay to, build your LinkedIn up, get to know people, especially like for me, I feel like I found my place in the community relations world of, open source and developer relations. And I'm still evolving and learning this space as well. And I'm grateful that GitLab is giving me the chance to continue to grow. Um, but also with my title being an evangelism program manager, I told the recruiter and I also told John, I said, I would never have found this role on my own, right? Like,
Yeah. Like, what does that title mean?
I'm like, I was like, the description looks exactly like what I've been doing for these years. But if I was to type in a role, I wouldn't have used the word evangelism, right? So
hmm
um, I think that too is a test to like how they view our roles because you too have a title that has evangelism educator, right? So
I
um,
love it. I like
yeah,
that
so it's a
that
really
title.
interesting like story because, like I said, I was recruited and um, went through the process right before the holidays and was like on pins and needles, like, okay, what am I going to do? My contract with Google was ending in March, so I was like, okay, I need to know what I'm doing before this happens, and
Yep.
yeah,
That's
that's how I got
fantastic.
here.
And you were so involved in so many aspects of the tech world. If you started at Docker and then you did 2 years at Google as an events coordinator, specifically for the cloud stuff, so Kubernetes and this cloud native stuff, I'd argue that you have a lot of technical knowledge about those things
Yeah,
that people, when they see your title, wouldn't necessarily expect. And I would imagine that's a fairly negative experience pretty often.
yeah, it is, and I would tell people when you're in these. Sometimes I consider myself like as any program manager when I was doing the Kubernetes and cloud native. I almost felt like a puppeteer sometimes. Like I was pulling all the strings behind the doors or behind my computer making things happen. But when I would be in these event spaces face to face, when we were in that space, it'd be like, oh, you're doing all this? Or, or folks would kind of say, like, oh, so what do you do? Or how do you, like, it was more of an inquisitive versus like, oh, like, oh, this is great. Thank you for, what you're, contributing to, or how you're, helping us out or whatnot. Like, I think it was more like almost like a challenge in some spaces, right? Like my first large conference was at KubeCon Barcelona. I started in April, and KubeCon Barcelona was middle of May. So when I say I was thrust into a world unknown, right? Like I had did Docker cons and whatnot, which are a little smaller, so to speak. Excuse me. But when you think of KubeCon Barcelona, was one of the largest KubeCons they had for the European. I think it was about 7,000 folks. We had 2 booth spaces that were crazy. We had like stairs. Like if I show you pictures, PJ, you like, wow, you guys like literally built like a coffee space on one of our stages.
Like a tiny house in the middle of the floor. Like
we literally built like theater seating.
Wow.
Yeah. I had got inspiration from one of the like lounges that was on campus and was like, we need this on a smaller scale here for the community space. And like, we had different.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It was awesome. And that's how we had people come in and do impromptu meetups, right? So they were scheduled, but every break that was like a 45-minute break in between sessions, we had people up and doing meetups or whatnot, and like on TVs and stuff. So I'm trying to do something like that similar, hopefully for AWS. Just putting that out.
Oh there. Man, when is AWS? Is that reInvent? Which one is that?
reInvent, yeah, end of November.
November. So, man.
I was a fish out of water for sure. The amount of questions that I was getting about Kubernetes and knowing, like, I knew a little bit, but the amount of questions and having to be on my toes and like definitely was an experience. And I think it's part of that rush that made me like keep going, right? Like, oh, you did this, it was successful, and you're meeting all these people, and it's like now the training wheels are off. Like, go for it. Now you're part of the community, and people are going to look to you now for advice on not just community relations stuff, but like if we need to have a meetup or people want to like present, now they know you're the person to go to have some of these things. So
right,
I've just kind of kept that same drive into this next role as well, like where I'm at today.
That face-to-face element, when people see you and start to associate you with the title and with what it is you actually do for your job. You mentioned that they were surprised and they're, oh, you, and you said it's more, it's like they're questioning that it's even possible, as opposed to just saying, this is great, I love what you did. And I think that that's a common, I mean, obviously better than me why the hell's a white man telling you this, but like there's an assumption about 1, women, 2, people of color, women of color, that you're not there for X reason, that surely you're like this. Telling women developers they must work for marketing is something that comes to mind.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because the Barcelona experience was an eye-opening experience just all together, right? Meeting all these different people. And actually, that's actually when I first came in contact with GitLab. They had an amazing event with us that was on a rooftop that literally looked over like all these like, I don't know, sightseeing.
Like you could look out and see all of Barcelona.
Yes, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny because I mentioned that to somebody from our communications team, and they're like, "You were there?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was my first intro to GitLab."
It was a month after I started working in tech.
Right? But yeah, I actually came in encounter with somebody that async is a big thing at GitLab. But when I was in my previous role, a lot of it is, I mean, it's a global company as well, but there was a lot of times where people didn't realize who was doing what or who was moving what. You might just see a name attached to a assignment or role, right? Or responsibility, I should say. And when I came in contact with some of these people, they were very rude in person. And in that space and being new, I didn't know how to really navigate like my natural reaction. You have to like reel that back a little bit. And I had to go to my manager, and it became a really big deal. This person had to then apologize, right? Um, but I think, like I said, that whole experience like gave me like this strength of like push through, because you're not only representing yourself in the company and what you do and what you bring to the table, but like there's so many more people that want to be in these spaces that aren't. So I think that was part of like the motivation. Like, you got yourself here, you've built all these programs, you've executed, like I can see it, right? When you do events and like you do all these things, it's like all this work that goes into the 2-day event or 4-day series, right? So it's like, oh wow, everybody, we're getting great responses, everybody's participating. And then to feel like small at one point, um, was like, oh no, I'm bigger than this situation, right? And that like I can take this moment and make, or like empower other people. Like I want to be the voice for folks that I couldn't talk to. Like now I want to be the person that's like, hey, you're interested, I'm here, like, use me as a resource. I'm here to encourage folks to say, like, whether you are a developer and just trying to break through, or if you're in marketing and want to get into the tech space and transition, like, you might not see yourself reflected, but take that chance and just make that leap.
Right. And that must be an immense amount of pressure for you to be taking on yourself, to say, I know that I am one of a small group of people within a small group of people that are doing this. I mean, Black women in tech, there are amazing examples out there, and there's tons of amazing women and non-binary people and Black people who are doing great work in tech and are visible, such that now once you see yourself in somewhere, it becomes so much easier to envision yourself there. But it is absolutely hard to feel like you're one of those first people, and to put that pressure on yourself. So I mean, I can't imagine the difficulty of that and the stress of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I went to All Things Open, maybe it was 2 years ago, my first All Things Open conference. And we were a diversity sponsor. So I went to one of the talks, and one of the subjects was a lady basically saying, how she was also a Black woman, and she was saying how hard it is to see, or when you're networking, she made a game of it. And she was like, I try to find 10 people that I feel like I identify with to force myself to say hi or, meet, right? And I felt like, wow, okay, somebody else relates to how this can be when you're in a space of 8,000 people and you feel like you're, no one else looks like you or can relate to, what you do in the industry, right? So for me, I kind of took that, and I mean, I didn't, connect with her and meet her, but I think really it was only like 5 or 6 of us there, in an all open source space. So again, those are those little moments that I have when I'm at these conferences and feeling like the lone wolf, like not using, my identity as a challenge by any means, but like, or an obstacle, but just going out and like wearing, being confident and just introducing myself, whether we identify, similarly or not, like just trying to be a little bit more like, hey, at these conferences, you can feel like you're just moving through a sea of people and like no one really sees anyone, to be honest.
Literally a sea of people sometimes. Yeah, probably, sometimes hopefully there's a 6-foot buffer these days.
Hey, let's make that eye contact. Like, let's not hide in the booth. Let's stand outside of the booth and like talk to people and encourage folks and, just represent myself in the company the best way I can.
Yeah. And that there's also this tendency, as much as this is so important to you, being a visible person and showing people that are like you the possibilities, that shouldn't be the only thing we focus on. Women in tech are more than a conference talk about being a woman in tech. People of color in tech are more than talking about diversity initiatives. Those are all very important, but you have very real expertise, 13 years of experience, you said.
Yes.
And you can talk on that, and it doesn't have to only be we're hosting a diversity talk and we want you to be there. It's we're hosting a talk about building community and you do that and we want you there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's kind of like I've been putting these little nuggets in the universe of like, hey, I want to start talking a little bit more about what I do and creating more of a name for myself now that I've had, a little over 3 years in the industry. And what's unfortunate is I can't think of the conference off top, but I will share it with you so you could put it with the description. But I'll be part of a panel in 2 weeks with some pretty known folks in the industry who do community relations and some legacy folks to talk about what I do in community relations. So things are starting to pick up a little bit, and I'm excited to even be asked to join a panel with folks that have been in this space for like, when I say like legacy, I mean like they helped write DOS, like
what?
Yeah, I let me see if I can find his name for you.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That like, and again, that's because you are doing this amazing work and you are creating communities. And I've watched the things that you've helped create, and it's fantastic. I couldn't ask for a better a teammate on the community relations team than what you've been doing. And
so his name is Jim Hall.
Jim Hall.
Yes. But yeah, so he asked me, well, thanks to Naritzi, she kind of told him like, hey, I think I have a great person for the panel. And yeah, so that'll be one of my first panels of talking strictly about the community relations stuff.
That's awesome.
I'm excited. Yeah, so I'll share the link once I get a little bit more. I have to write my speaking bio and all that stuff. So
isn't it so much fun to write a bio? They're like, tell us about yourself, and you're like, PJ did a thing and he's great. So thank you. Yeah. I had to do the same thing for when I would submit poetry to journals, and they'd be like, tell us about yourself. And I'm like, he's a teacher. He write poetry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jamie, we are a little over time. We are at time, really. And I don't know about you, but since I know we're on the same time zone here, I know it's starting to feel like lunchtime. Anything else you want to tell us about? Anything else you want to share? Any resources or anything you want to tell us about? This is your chance to plug whatever. Tell us anything.
So again,
or parting advice, anything.
Right. Well, okay. Parting advice would be, if you believe that you can do it, then go for it. I tell people all the time, like, my journey is because I took a chance on myself. So if you just affirm and just say, I can, I will, and it'll happen. I think that's the nugget that I would leave with folks in all things in life, right? If you want it, say it out loud and you can obtain it. When it comes to GitLab and the community programs that I manage, if you're interested in hosting something, like I said, again, in tech or beyond code, reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I will definitely be in contact. I love connecting with new folks, and if you want to just pick my brain about community relations or things that you're doing as well, I'm interested to chat.
Fantastic. And listen, those of you watching this live, thank you for tuning in. Those of you watching this later, reach out to Jamie. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to make things work. She's got expertise that you can use to help build communities. She's been doing it at GitLab for the past few months. You got hired just a little bit before I did. Yes. So I feel like we're both in that new kid boat.
Yes.
We're at the kids table.
Yes, I do feel like that sometimes. I haven't graduated to the teenage table yet, but I feel like I'm almost there.
I can't have conversations with the grown folks yet. I still have to sit here and be like, this kid's like eating with their hands. It's weird.
Right.
But one of the good things about GitLab, I think, is that I feel empowered by GitLab to start contributing and start doing stuff. And you have absolutely been doing amazing things at GitLab in your few months there. And you're someone that I'm looking up to and aspiring to be more like. So you've already got one big fan behind you.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that.
After this stream, I'm sure there's only going to be more. So on that, let's go ahead and we'll take down the stream, and y'all can rewatch it on YouTube at GitLab Unfiltered. Again, Jamie has a LinkedIn. Reach out to her there. Look out for the amazing 10-year anniversary stuff coming up with GitLab. And I will see you guys another time. Thank you so much for tuning in, y'all.
Bye. Thanks for having me.